Character creation is almost half of the entire game of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. The background system and the heroic chronicle found in the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount allows players to make a character that is as fleshed out as they want. But as a player, how much is too much? And as a DM, when do you say no? All that and more on today's page. Hello all, and thank you for opening up your Dungeon Master's Handbook. My name is Russell, and on today's page we have character creation. Going from a blank character sheet to ready to play at the table. We'll be talking about everything from ability scores to backgrounds to backstories. I hope that I can give you all a little bit of insight into how to make your characters more enjoyable to play while not putting too much pressure on your game master. The first topic of the day is ability scores. What is the best method to pick your scores? First, I should say that at the table should all agree to use the same method. This will simply overall help party balance. The three options are standard array, rolling, and point buy for 5e D&D. Standard array is a great way to introduce a new player to character creation. There's very little customization, which makes it easy. If they're playing a rogue, they're going to put their 15 into dexterity. For a cleric, they're going to put it into wisdom. Most of the time, regardless of their race. This method can be very limiting for experienced players who want more customization. The fact that you must have a negative modifier in at least one score can put limitations on what characters a player can make. If someone wanted to play a character who was in fighting pits for money to fund his wizard education, but was then cursed by an eldritch horror to become a warlock, it would be very difficult to have ability scores that would convey and reflect that history. Simply put, it's nearly impossible to be a jack-of-all-trades, master of none with standard array. For basic character archetypes and new players, it's perfect. But players might prefer more customization when they become more experienced. The opposite end of the spectrum is rolling for stats. For those of you that don't know, rolling would consist of rolling 4d6, dropping the lowest number, and doing that 6 times. Then take those numbers and assign them to an ability score independently. This method provides the most random method for determining scores, and it also uses the dice that make TTRPGs so iconic. However, this method is also flawed in my opinion. Overall, it can create too much imbalance within the party. With rolling for stats, it is possible for a character to have a maxed out 20 in their primary stat at level 1. First, that is unrealistic for a person to have at level 1, and second, they would be massively more effective in combat and out of combat than their party members, and could steal the spotlight away from their fellow players. I should come out and say that I'm not trying to convince your table to play one way or another. I'm just saying my experience using the different methods and what I will choose to use in the future. The way I have combated this imbalance when rolling for stats is by setting a maximum and minimum thresholds that a player's stat cannot exceed or fall beneath. Before applying racial bonuses, standard array gives an average ability score of 12. I set this as the minimum threshold for rolling for stats. So if after they roll you add up all their scores and divide by 6 and it's not above 12, they can re-roll all 6. I did this because I want the party to feel like they're stronger than a standard array character. I believe that if a person has average ability scores, then they would be an average person and not an adventurer in D&D. However, I don't want them to feel overpowered either, so I set a maximum average ability score at 14. If they exceed 14, they can re-roll individual numbers of their scores until the average is below 14. Even with both of those measures in place, party imbalance can still be pretty strong. For example, I have a human gunslinger in my current party with an average ability score of exactly 12, making him qualify with the minimum threshold. Now, gunslingers need just about every ability score to be effective. They need dexterity to shoot, they need intelligence to repair their weapons, and they need wisdom to get grip points. Luckily, he has at least 10 in every score because he is a human, but it could have gone very poorly for him. Currently, he has a measly +4 to hit with his pistol, and to fix his jammed or broken guns, he has only a +2 to his check because he doesn't have proficiency in Tinkerer's tools yet. Compare this gunslinger to a Furbolg Ranger with an average of 14 in every stat that I have in my current campaign. She has a 16 in 3 of her stats and already an impressive +7 to hit with her archery fighting style. She is level 2 like the rest of the party and already has a spell save DC of 13 and a +5 to hit as a secondary caster. This ranger does not focus on their spells for combat, aside from Hunter's Mark, but yet her saves are already quite high. When compared to the DC 12 that the gunslinger will have with his trick shots, the imbalance is already noticeable. The noticeable imbalance created a little bit of turbulence within the party during character creation. The ranger was obviously thrilled, and the gunslinger was not. Because of this, I did something that I believe any DM should do in this situation. I talked to the player. I went to the Gunsling's player and asked him if he would be able to have fun playing the current character. If not, I would have let him re-roll or possibly just add 1 or 2 to one of his stats. Even though he would have had the same average with Standard Array, I wanted to make sure that he could feel like he could have a good time with this character when comparing it to the other characters. He said he could, and so he was introduced to the campaign with an average of only 12. At my tables, given all that I've said, the perfect balance has been point buy. My most recent campaign was levels 2 through 20 and started with point buy. It allowed characters to have a good balance of what they wanted to play, even with not having 15 in their primary stat. As well, with the optional rule in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, players don't have to choose a specific race to make their characters more effective with their primary stat. This will help lead to more unique characters at your tables. All in all, it depends on how your table wants to play. If you want a lot of variety and risk at your table, then roll for your stats. If you want everyone to be on a level playing field, then go with Standard Array. For happy middle ground with a little bit more customization, I would go with point buy. With ability scores out of the way, let's move on to our second topic on this page, backstories. As a DM, I love a good backstory to help with my world building. They can create interesting NPCs and organizations in the cities that I've already created. But how much is too much? If you're starting at a low level, like level 1 or 2, then you can't really have too much of a story to justify your low level. What I mean by that is you can't have too much adventuring experience. You can have plenty of social experience, education, labor, or anything that wouldn't justify gaining XP. You could have seen the world and met dozens of people on your travels, so long as you didn't consistently defend yourself while traveling. It should just be the story of how you became who you are. This can be as long or as short as you want. In my most recent campaign, I required players to have at least 2 pages of backstory, with a maximum of 4 pages. Lots of tables and GMs will not require very large backstories so that it's easier to fit into the GM's world. The important thing to remember when making a backstory is that you're going to be an adventurer and you're going to be traveling with other people. The only thing you have to have in a backstory is a reason for adventuring, and a reason that you'd be okay with staying with a group. The latter can be determined once you're in-game through RP, but you should have some ideas of it going into session 1. The reason for adventuring is really up to your creativity. You could be looking for an item that your family once lost, or a dead sibling who you are just not convinced is actually dead. For DMs, incorporating character backstories into your world is something that I will cover more in depth in a future world building video. But overall, I use characters to add more detail to the rough edges of a world that I already have. For example, Cyrus the Gunslinger was once a member of the town guard in the capital city of Andorra of my world. In his backstory that he wrote, he gave me details to fill in about the structure of the guard post, the economic statuses of different parts of the city, and a few NPCs. Also, as a DM, I have to be the one to make sure that every backstory will fit into the campaign nicely. If I receive a backstory that is without plot hooks, lacks a reason for adventuring, and overall doesn't seem like it'll mesh well with the party, I will talk to the player. For me, it is okay to say no when a player asks if their character could have had a brush with a legendary monster like a dragon or a kraken. All in all, I just like to make sure that each player knows what kind of campaign they're getting into and what they're going to be playing in. I like to DM for groups that have time invested in their characters, even before session 1, through deep character backstories. But they still have to be only a level 1 character. And of course, it's up to your table how you want to play. These are some of the strategies that I've used. If you want to use them, I encourage that. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments down below. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope you find yourself at a table real soon.